President Trump has officially pulled out of the Iran deal. That's not good. That's not good. I'll break it all down in a little bit. But first, let's see what he said about it. And then I'll do my best to deconstruct it for you and give you all the nuance and tell you all the implications.
We'll see how we do with Iran. Probably we won't do very well with them, but that's okay too. They've got to understand life, because I don't think they do understand life. If you look at what's happening in the Middle East with Syria, with Yemen, with all of the places they're involved, it's bedlam and death, and we can't allow that to happen. So we have terminated a terrible, terrible deal that should have never, ever been made. And we will be putting on among the strongest sanctions that we've ever put on a country. And they're going into effect very shortly. They're mostly constituted and drawn already. And we'll just have to see what happens. But we can't allow a deal to hurt the world. That's a deal to hurt the world. That's not a deal for the United States. That's a deal to hurt the world. And so we're going to make either a really good deal for the world, or we're not going to make a deal at all. And Iran will come back and say, we don't want to negotiate. And of course, they're going to say that. And if I were their position, I'd say that too for the first couple of months. We're not going to negotiate, but they'll negotiate. Or something will happen. And hopefully that won't be the case. But I don't think they should do that. I would advise Iran not to start their nuclear program. I would advise them very strongly. If they do, there will be very severe consequence. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, so there's a lot to say about this. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what the Iran deal actually is. So, under the Iran deal, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, they get to basically go into Iran and regulate the shit out of their nuclear program. So, under this deal, Iran is allowed to have a nuclear program, as every country is under international law, but they're only allowed to enrich to a very low point, not the point where you can get a nuclear weapon. They would need to, it would require a significant amount more enrichment in order to get to a nuclear weapon. So they can do it for their power grid and research. So they're allowed to have a nuclear program for those reasons. Again, as every country is under international law, that's just a restatement of international law. So in effect, there are some hardliners in the U.S. who say they should have no nuclear power at all, but that's not even up for debate or question. Under international law, they are allowed to have it for medical research and for their power grid and things of that nature. So they're allowed to have that, and again, they're regulated heavily by the IAEA, who can go in there whenever they want and check and see what's going on. And to this point, 10 times the IAEA, since the deal was signed, 10 times the IAEA said they're abiding by the deal completely. So, in other words, the experts who are responsible for upholding the deal have said they're upholding their end of the deal across the board. Now, that's an important fact, and a fact that's never brought up by U.S. media, honestly never even brought up by the Democrats. Now, in return for basically the guarantee that they don't create a nuclear weapon and allowing in the regulators to check to make sure, all that happens is the U.S. relieved the sanctions that we had on them for a very long time, and we give them back their own money that we stole. And so we have to promise not to put any new sanctions on them under the deal and give them back their own money that we stole. Now, in order to understand why we even had this deal in the first place, you have to understand history going back decades. And a lot of people don't know this, but in 1953, the CIA overthrew the democratically elected leader of Iran, a guy named Mohammad Mossadegh. Now, the reason why we overthrew him is, and this is all historical record, you could check it for yourself, it's all out there in the open. This isn't even stuff that they pretend isn't true anymore. It's gotten to the point where they're like, yeah, that's what it is. So Mohammad Mossadegh was elected, and he promised that he was going to give the oil wealth of the country of Iran to the people of Iran. So when he got in power, the U.S. said, nope, we can't allow that to happen. It was actually, to be fair, the U.S. and the U.K. So the CIA overthrew the Iranian government and put the Shah into power. Now, the Shah had a dictatorship, and he was more secular in some ways, and so on social issues, you could say, okay, he did a better job than what they have now, but inevitably what ended up happening was the Shah was overthrown in the 1979 Islamic Revolution. So the U.S. government overthrows a democratically elected leader, puts a dictator into power, then there's a backlash against the U.S. propped up and Western propped up dictator, and then there's the Islamic Revolution. So since the Islamic Revolution, they've had, a theocracy to one degree or another. They have elections, and the president has some power, but of course the Revolutionary Guards and the Grand Ayatollah really, really run stuff. So ever since that revolution, we've basically wanted regime change again in Iran. So with the Obama administration and the Iran deal, the nuclear deal, it was just kind of like an acceptance of reality that, okay, these are the facts as they exist right now. They have, a government that overthrew our puppet dictatorship, so we're just going to work within the parameters and make sure that they don't get a nuclear weapon, and then we'll give them back their own money. And it's just a way to create peace and stability. And Obama has done a lot of terrible things on Middle East policy, but I honestly think that was one of his best parts. I gave him nothing but credit for the Iran deal. And in fact, what happened was there were some people in the Trump administration who were initially against the deal, but then they read it. And for example, when Mattis read it, he said, I read it 3 times and I was shocked by how tough of a deal it was. And this is a talking point you guys have heard me say a bunch of times, that under this deal, the U.S. got everything we wanted, and all Iran got was like the bare minimum. Hey, we're going to roll back the sanctions that we had on you. We're going to promise not to add new sanctions, and we're going to give you back your own money. So that's like, okay, you get the bare minimum, and what do we get? The IAEA gets to basically go into your country whenever. You sacrifice your sovereignty to have these regulators go in there, and they make sure that you're not enriching to the point of getting a nuclear weapon. So the only people who could be against this deal are ignorant buffoons who know nothing about it, and, for example, are swayed by stupid and factually wrong Fox News talking points, and hardline neocon ideologues who want regime change come hell or high water, so they're just going to be against any deal. And, my suspicion is John Bolton, who of course was just brought in, and Mike Pompeo, these are 2 people who have been pushing Trump in the direction of scrap the Iran nuclear deal. And Trump, I don't think he's a committed ideologue. I don't think he really believes anything. I just think he's ignorant. I think I honestly would laugh in your face if you told me you genuinely believe that Donald Trump read the Iran nuclear deal. I don't think he read it. So he's just going with what his top administration officials are telling him, and they happen to be hardcore neocons. So that's the background of the Iran nuclear deal. And you see a lot of hints of just how ignorant Trump is in this clip. He says, quote, about Iran, they've got to understand life. I have no idea what that means. That's something that somebody says when they don't have anything substantive to say, so they fill the air in the room by hearing their own voice. The Iranians, they've got to understand life. I don't think they understand life. What does that mean, Don? And then he says it's a, quote, terrible deal. Okay, but they never go on to explain why or how it's a bad deal. If they ever say anything, Trump brings up, they got $150 billion of our money. But that's just a lie. That's just factually wrong. He makes it seem like it's American taxpayer money that's going to Iran. That's not true. We stole their money from them, and now we're giving their money back to them. So if it's explain why it's a terrible deal. They will never give you accurate, real reasons why it's a terrible deal. And then he says, we're going to make a really good deal. Okay, but then again, so what would be in your really good deal? Explain. Explain what would be different from the deal we already have. Explain what would constitute a really good deal. To what ends? To what ends? And then he says, oh, we're going to put on the strongest sanctions. But jackass, the whole point of the sanctions in the first place was, okay, we're going to sanction you until we get guarantees that you're not going to have a nuclear program to make weapons, and we can get regulators in there to verify that. So we got exactly the thing that the sanctions were fucking for. We got exactly what we wanted. But that's the thing. He doesn't fucking believe anything. The neocons want regime change. And so what they're trying to do is just break up peace and diplomacy, which is what we got with that deal. And then Trump is out there feigning this idea like, oh, we're going to get a better deal. We're going to put strongest sanctions on them. To what ends? If you're going to put the strongest sanctions, what? For what? What's the end goal? Or do you just think the sanctions on their own merit are just something that's a positive, which I think is really the case on some level. That they're like, yeah, we just want to punish. We want to punish the people of Iran because that's what this is going to do. And then hopefully the people of Iran will not blame the U.S. and the sanctions for why they're struggling, and they will try to overthrow the government. I think that's what's going on some level. You know, sow discord and discontent, and then make it so that the people turn on the Iranian government. Now, the people are already not happy with the Iranian government. But what's funny is this will do the exact opposite of what they want it to do. This will make people rally around their own government and blame the United States. And by the way, the other countries, there are 5 other countries in the Iran deal, our allies. All of them are like, we're staying in the deal. So, and that leads to another point, which is, listen, man, the U.S.'s word, our word was already worth shit before, in my opinion, because we always violate international law, and I could give you my whole spiel about that, and you've heard it a million times. But between the Paris Agreement, we're the only country in the world that backed out of the Paris Agreement. The only one in the fucking world. And now this. No U.S. treaty is going to be worth anything ever again. Because people aren't idiots. They look and they go, oh, they flip like that on things that they sign. Whatever the next administration is that comes into power after the one that signed the treaty, they can just fucking get rid of it immediately. So if they're not going to uphold treaties, well, then why the fuck would anybody do any negotiation with them at all? And then that brings up the other point of North Korea. You just decided, hey, we're going to have talks with North Korea and we're going to get them to give up their weapons. Kim Jong-un just saw you rip up a treaty where they guaranteed we're not going to create nuclear weapons. And you wanted to punish them anyway. So why would that guy say, I'm going to give up the nukes I already have, when it's a guarantee you're going to be standoffish no matter what? There is no coherent philosophy guiding this administration. They're just a bunch of fucking rabid idiots. That's what it is. And then he brings up Syria and Yemen. Congratulations on knowing that those countries exist, Donald. That's probably the bare minimum you know about them. But the amazing thing is, if you're going to bring up Iran in the context of Syria and Yemen, finish the thought, dipshit. Finish the thought. Who are they fighting? Now, when it comes to Syria, they're on the side of the Assad government. They're on the side of the Syrian government. Well, the Syrian government, like them or hate them, they are fighting jihadists. They are fighting ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That's a fact. So, oftentimes you hear this bullshit talking point. Trump has said it. Other Republicans say it all the time. Even some Democrats say it. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. But they include shit like that in their conception of terrorism. So being on the side of the Syrian government against ISIS and Al-Qaeda constitutes terrorism to these fucking morons. So, and then with Yemen, are you fucking kidding me? The Shia Houthis are in control of Yemen right now. They're fighting back against Sunni fundamentalists, so Al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabia. So yet again, you're framing this notion as, and we don't even know for sure if Iran is really giving weapons to the Shia Houthis, but let's say they are for a second. So what? I don't give a shit. I would rather them maintain control of Yemen than fucking Al-Qaeda, who are the Sunni militias on the ground. So they're so confused about the world, or they're not really confused, and what they're doing is using these arguments to bolster Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, who's our ally, and we don't give a fuck that they're in bed with Al-Qaeda. We don't give a fuck. We fund jihadist rebels in Syria. So Mr. I'm tough on terrorism is actually siding with the people who are the real terrorists. There is no Shia jihadist threat against the U.S. That's not a thing. Jesus Christ, man. And then, I think the most important point is, at the end of that clip there, he says, we're going to make a better deal, which again, they never describe what are the terms of this better deal you're talking about. We already got everything we want in the Iran deal. We already got everything we want in that. So when you say we're going to make another deal, first of all, no, you're not. Second of all, even if you were, what the fuck would be in that deal? What would be in it that would make it different from what we have right now? He goes, quote, or something will happen. Or what will happen, Don? What will fucking happen? What will happen? Say it. Say it. Say it. You guys want regime change. Again, I don't think he actually wants anything because he's just an idiot. And he doesn't know anything and he's ignorant. He has no ideology. He's just fucking going with whatever the winds are. Oh, the last person in the room told me to fucking go to war again, so I'm going to war again. But Pompeo and Bolton and his rabid band of neocon idiots, that's what they want. They want regime change. And they're going to try to get it come hell or high water. And listen, man. It's not a coincidence that John Bolton came into the administration, and then a week later we were already bombing the Syrian government. That's not a coincidence. These guys are open and honest about what they want. They want regime change. They want total and complete U.S. dominance of everywhere in the world. That's what they want. In the geopolitical chessboard, we need to have our puppet dictators in control. So they threw out a perfectly good deal simply because they don't want that regime in there. So yet again, and it's hilarious, these are the same people who yelp about interference in our elections. Interference in our elections. Can you imagine having the nerve, having the balls, where your government overthrew another government, a democratically elected leader, and then today we're still trying to dictate the terms to that government? Now, I'm not a fan of the Islamic Republic. Of course not. It's none of our business, though. Who the fuck rules Iran? None whatsoever. And if anything, us being against the government is going to rally people to the side of the government, because if there's anything that rallies people together, it's an outside influence, foreign invaders against them. And that's what's happening here. So this is terrible. And again, the U.S. word means absolutely nothing now. Between the Paris Agreement and the Iran deal, you know, and fucking Kim Jong-un learned the lesson for the 913th time. Of course I'm never going to give up my nukes. What are you, fucking crazy? He might say, and he might make some real concessions, but he's never going to fucking give up his nukes. He saw what happened with Gaddafi. He sees what happens with Iran. They don't even have nukes. You made a deal to guarantee they don't have nukes, and you still rip up the deal. So, get him out of there, man. Get this administration out of there. This is, like, horrendously stupid. Horrendously stupid. Again, probably two of the best things Obama did. Paris Climate Agreement, even though it should have been more than that, the Republicans rejected it as a treaty. That's why it's just an agreement, because they didn't approve it to be a treaty. But the Paris Climate Agreement is one, and the Iran nuclear deal is another. And he's just fucking ripping it up, throwing it out the window. Obamacare, he's basically destroyed that. And Obamacare was a half measure to begin with. It's a right-wing idea to begin with, but it's better than what we had. But he destroyed that too. That's why 4 million people have lost their health insurance since Trump became president. 4 million people. So he doesn't have an ideology. He doesn't have a philosophy. He's the Fox News president. It's a bad deal. I heard it was a bad deal from fucking Brian Kilmeade and Greg Gutfeld and fucking, Steve Doocy, the genius Steve Doocy. I heard it was a bad deal. So what we're going to do, it's a terrible deal. We're going to make a really good deal. And we're going to have the strongest sanctions, or something will happen. Yeah, so just casually threaten other countries, even though we got a deal where we got everything we wanted. So, fuck this. They're a bunch of loathsome cretins, and simply if you think otherwise, you just don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know anything. You don't know anything about what you're talking about. You haven't read the deal. When I read the deal, I was like, holy shit. I honestly thought this is too hard on Iran. Like, I'm amazed that they agreed to this in the first place. Oh, and final point. I knew I was forgetting something here. We already violated the deal. The IAEA verified Iran 10 times. They said they're following the deal to the letter. We already violated it. In 2017, we passed new sanctions. And I think only one person voted against it. I think it was only Bernie Sanders who voted against it. How fucking stupid do you have to be? We didn't have to do anything under the deal. God damn it, we had to do nothing. All we had to do, give them back their own fucking money, roll back the old sanctions, and don't put new sanctions on them. But what do the idiots in D.C. do? Something's bad in Iran and something about a missile test or something. So fucking new sanctions. So we violate the deal. And then, as always is the case, the U.S. media ignores it when we violate the deal. But then if they respond in kind and they do a tit for tat, like, okay, you guys violated the deal. Well, here's another missile test because you violated it. So we're going to go tit for tat with you. In the U.S. media, oh, Iran violated the deal without bringing up the context that we fucking violated it first. So it's unbelievable, man. Who the fuck thinks that Iran is an actual threat to us? Who really thinks? How many countries are we bombing right now? 8. 8 countries. We have 900 military bases all around the world. How many are they bombing right now? Donut. 0. 0. They say, oh, they're involved in Yemen. That's not proven, number one. Number two, worst case scenario, they're just sending weapons to the Shia Houthis, which I don't give a fuck about anyway, because their Houthis are fighting Al-Qaeda. So we're bombing 8 countries. We have 900 military bases. We keep doing illegal drone strikes and drone warfare. We just got rid of the rules of engagement in Somalia. We just put boots on the ground in Somalia. We're the sole imperialist power. And we're clutching our pearls about a government that has what? 1/1000 the amount of military spending that we have? We're going to pretend like they're a fucking threat? We're going to pretend like this rinky-dink country, we have the strongest military that ever existed in human history. Are you really trying to tell us that Tehran is a threat to fucking nuke Nebraska or some shit? Please, shut the fuck up. Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, they want regime change in Iran. The neocons in the US, we want regime change in Iran because we want to control the country, dominate the country, and jack their natural resources again. And if you don't see that, you're not fucking paying attention or you're too stupid to digest it.